In this desolate world, where everything is in ruins, food is hard to come by. However, the children in this bleak place are always searching for anything that might have even a little value because they can only get food if they have something valuable to trade. You see, there's this golem that roams the barren streets, and whenever kids stumble across this walking piece of stone, they always try to offer it something valuable. In return, the golem gives them food. This golem only appears in Sector 50, and nobody knows where it came from or who its owner is. However, it's not always guaranteed that the golem will accept just anything in exchange for food. It has to be something the golem finds valuable, which is why children often end up with nothing in return. Right now, a group of kids is frustrated because the golem just refused to take their flashlight, even though yesterday it accepted one. As angry as they are, they know better than to retaliate. There's always the risk that they might end up dead. There's a saying that golems have been seen entering the streets and killing people. Then there's this white-haired boy, Ray. The moment he spots the golem, he quickly steps in its path and offers everything valuable he's managed to gather. The golem takes note of the items and proceeds to grab the bag. And then, it flips the bag over into its mouth. Seeing the massive haul Ray just traded, all the onlookers are in awe. They have no idea how he managed to get his hands on so many valuable items. What makes it even more frustrating for them is that this isn't the first time Ray has pulled off a trade this big. Meanwhile, the golem starts dropping food supplies, and the amount Ray receives is enough to completely fill his backpack. The kids on the sidelines can't help but feel jealous and angry. It just doesn't make sense to them as to why does this one guy get so much food while they're left starving. At one point, some of them even consider stealing his supplies, but a few of them quickly shut that idea down. Apparently, Ray has a reputation. People call him the Ghost of 17th Street. As Ray walks from Sector 50 towards 17th Street, he suddenly senses the presence of people hiding in the shadows. His senses are so sharp that he can tell exactly how many there are. If he has to be precise, there are 7 people. So, he invites all these sneaky bastards to step out of hiding, especially since he already knows they've been following him for a while now. Enter this fat kid backed up by 6 others. The fatty doesn't forget to give props to our boy's sharp senses because they made sure to stay undetected while trailing him, yet they still got exposed. This fat kid is Ron. And this isn't the first time this fat sucker has pulled a stunt like this. Ray has already warned this shithead not to cross paths with him again. The last warning was crystal clear. If Ron ever showed his face like this again, he wouldn't be able to walk afterward. But Ron doesn't seem to care. Instead, he makes it clear that he's not going anywhere unless Ray hands over his supplies. Just put the fries in the bag, lil bro, or else. Fatty throws in a threat of his own, warning Ray that he won't be walking out of here safe and sound if he refuses. But my guy doesn't buy it for a second. If anyone's about to end up in bad shape, it sure as hell isn't him. Like I told you before, Ray has a reputation. He's the Ghost of 17th Street, a white ghost who moves without making a sound. And anyone who tries to mess with him are the ones who end up in the worst possible situation. But Fatty lets his ego get the best of him. He makes the big mistake of throwing a punch at Ray. But my guy barely even reacts. Just tilts his head slightly and dodges that punch like it's nobody's business. He then uses this brainless fool's own momentum against him, making him trip. But before Fatty can kiss the ground, my guy grabs him by the shirt, then delivers a devastating punch straight into his gut. That one blow is enough to leave this bastard mouth wide open, and he hits the ground like a sack of potatoes. Seeing their so-called boss get wrecked effortlessly, the rest of the group starts flinching in sheer panic. But since they can't just back off in a moment this critical, they make the foolish decision to charge straight at Ray. The first one swings a bat, but Ray ducks just in time, then counters with a brutal elbow smash that turns the guy's face into a bloody mess. He then further follows up, taking down the next 2 just as easily. 1 hit per person. That's all it takes. And just like that, all 6 of them are one with the ground. Ray then turns back to Ron, who, upon seeing his impending doom, is cowering in fear. My guy makes it very clear, just because Ron brought a few more ragtag idiots this time, the outcome was never going to change. As he walks towards the fatty, the sucker finds himself cornered. Ray is now gunning for this bastard's legs in order to keep his promise. He already warned Fatty that if he showed his face again, he wouldn't be able to walk ever again, and my guy plans to keep his word. On the other hand, Fatty pulls out a dagger from behind his back, trying to threaten Ray. His hands are shaking, slick with sweat as he warns Ray not to come any closer. He keeps calling Ray a monster, but deep down, he knows this dagger won't save his sorry ass. Speaking of monster, there's actually a backstory behind that title Ray's been given. You see, ever since he was a child, Ray was very different from others. Whenever he got severe injuries, there was never any expression on his face, and that made people wary of him. Kids his age were supposed to cry when they got hurt, but Ray stayed expressionless. Even in desperate, hopeless times when the other kids cried, Ray was the only one who never felt sorrow, hopelessness, remorse, or anger. Not once did a tear fall from his eyes. and eventually the other kids stopped associating with the weird kid who just didn't react like they did. His lack of emotions left him completely alone. Even Ray himself acknowledges how emotionless he is, and he never wanted to be like this. He always wished to be a normal person, just like any other kid. It had always been his desire to learn and experience this thing called emotion in his life. But even now, 6 years later, he still can't feel anything. However, what he can do is read other people's emotions. And right now, he can tell that Fatty is getting as desperate as he can possibly get. Ray reminds this coward that not using blades is an unspoken rule here. He questions this shithead. Did he bring that knife because he actually planned to stab him from the start? Of course, Fatty spins some bullshit about how he just picked it up from the garbage earlier. But my guy can see right through the lie. Ray doesn't need words to tell when someone is lying. He can tell just by looking at the color of the vessel inside their chest. You see, Ray has the ability to see a world others cannot. Every person has a small vessel within them, and whenever they feel emotions, certain colors of mana fill those vessels. Anger, hate, and love create red mana. Ridicule and apathy show up as blue mana. Joy and excitement result in yellow mana. And there are countless other colors as well, making Ray's world burst with shades that no one else can see. Meanwhile, the Fatty continues to issue threat after threat, trying to intimidate Ray. But it's clear that this bitch is too much of a coward to actually use the sharp dagger he's holding. Ray can see the deep black mana in the bastard's chest, which shows intense fear. With every step Ray takes toward him, the Fatty's fear only intensifies. But our boy, on the other hand, is ready to deliver the punishment this fat sucker truly deserves. A while later, Ray finally reaches his home. As soon as he enters the little tent where the others are staying, he's greeted by a bunch of kids who've been eagerly awaiting his return. The kid with green eyes is Pale, the leader of the underpass children. All the kids crowd around Ray, smiling and clinging to him in happiness, proud to have such a dependable brother. Later, as they sit together, he instructs everyone to show what supplies they've gathered so far. Each kid presents the food they managed to snag. Some have pieces of bubble gum, others have chocolate bars. But it's clear that this isn't nearly enough to feed all 7 people present. Naturally, everyone starts feeling anxious, unsure of how to proceed. This is then that Ray displays his haul, and seeing the copious amount of supplies Ray is having, all of the kids perk up in happiness. Some of the kids even start thinking that Ray must have stolen all of these supplies from the golem. Well, there's a reason why Ray is the only one who manages to bring back this much food every time he goes fishing. You see, the golem only takes magic items with residual mana. Since these kids can't see mana, they have no way of knowing which items are rich with it. So naturally, they end up with nothing from the golem. Now that they finally have enough food, Pale steps up to split it among everyone. Thanks to Ray, they'll actually get to fill their bellies before going to bed tonight. All the kids line up youngest to oldest. The first to receive their share is Josephine, the youngest among them. While the food is being shared, Ray quietly steps outside. He sits alone, deep in thought, reflecting on their miserable situation. No matter how hard they try, it's never enough. At the end of the day, there's always someone going to bed hungry. He thinks about making a trip to the warehouse, where he might be able to gather a big haul. He wants to support these kids no matter the cost. After all, he owes them his life. For a bit of context, let's flash back to a year ago, when Ray was buried in the snow, slowly freezing to death. It was these same kids who found him and pulled him out. At the time, Ray had already accepted death. He thought it was fine to just fade away in the cold. But these kids saved him unconditionally. They didn't expect anything in return. They didn't care about repayment. But Ray has a principle. He always pays his debts. Whether it's a favor or vengeance, he never leaves it unsettled. As he sits there lost in thought, Pale joins him, reminding him that he should get his share of food too. But Ray casually declines, claiming he isn't hungry. Unfortunately, his grumbling stomach betrays him. Without a word, Pale breaks his biscuit bar in half and hands one piece over to Ray. Just then, rain starts pouring, but it's not normal rain. The droplets are black. It seems to be a common occurrence in this desolate world. There are rumors that this black rain is the result of mages using too much magic. Apparently, mages live in the lower numbered sectors. Pale is convinced that the golem is something sent by a mage. But Ray isn't so sure. He thinks the golem might be a machine. Pale quickly disagrees. He's certain that magic is what keeps it moving. Well, Ray doesn't argue, because he's actually seen the golems using magic with his own eyes. Whenever a golem walks around, it sucks up mana from the surrounding atmosphere, drawing it into its core. That mana then mixes within and is expelled as a black gas. So there's a high chance that this gas is the cause of the black rain. Ray is convinced that there has to be a connection between the black rain and the black gas. That's when he suddenly remembers something important. Without another word, he pulls his hoodie up and tells Pale he's heading out for a bit. Naturally, Pale is against this idea. The rain is too heavy today, so much that even rivers are overflowing. But Ray doesn't care. He has to do what he has to do. And with that, he dashes off, leaving Pale sighing in frustration. Of course, Ray has a solid reason for doing this. You see, when it rains, everyone shelters inside their homes to avoid it. They believe that even a single drop of black rain touching you is enough to make you sick. However, Ray knows he can shield himself from the rain, making things easier for him. Once he reaches 18th Street, also known as Limpfoot Hector's Ration Warehouse, he sees the thugs inside having the time of their lives, playing and gambling. It's clear that Ray knew these idiots would be gambling on a rainy day, which is why he chose today to make his move. Since no one guards the warehouse on rainy days, it gives Ray the perfect opportunity to sneak inside. The place is completely dark, but Ray has a solution for that. Since the air is filled with an abundance of mana with hundreds of colors, Ray begins drawing in specific colors of mana, mixing them according to the right formula, and ignites fire in the palm of his hands. Although he doesn't know the exact principles of magic, he can use it just fine. Still, controlling red mana is a bit harder for some reason. With the light from the fire, Ray starts checking the supply boxes. As he goes through the supplies, a dagger suddenly whizzes by. It's so close it grazes his ear. It seems his presence has been noticed by the bastards inside, and they don't like the idea of some rat trying to steal their rations under their noses. Turns out, these bastards were hiding behind a pillar from the start, almost as if they were expecting Ray to show up. There are 3 of them in total, and they seem to know exactly where Ray is hiding. What's even more concerning for Ray is that he didn't expect these bastards to be equipped with night vision goggles. They throw their daggers again at Ray, but he dashes down, dodging them left and right. Seeing this, the goons with the night vision goggles are baffled. To think that a kid could dodge those daggers in this pitch-black place is just insane. The other goons berate their fellow to aim properly next time, but the poor guy gets rocked with a punch from Ray before he can even throw his dagger again. At this point, they're all bewildered at how this kid can see them in the dark. What they don't know is that Ray can easily see the color of their vessels. Right now, their vessels are glowing dark red because of the rage building inside them. One of them launches another dagger with all his strength, but Ray is already ready to dodge the oncoming strike. By reading the flow of mana from the vessel through the arteries, Ray can predict and easily dodge the blow. Once he dodges, he follows up with a kick to the guy's neck. With 2 of them down, only one remains, but the last one also gets a solid punch to his guts for his troubles. And that's how the 3 of these suckers end up face first on the ground. This is when another bastard barges into the warehouse. This one sounds trouble, because as far as Ray can recall, this guy is Humphrey, the Hector Group's executive. The bald bastard is disappointed to see all 3 of his men kissing the dirt. And what's really tweaking him out is the fact that they were wrecked by a rat. Even Ray doesn't want to mess with this guy, so he pulls his hoodie back over his face and decides it's time to get out of there. He quickly dashes and tries to strike the bastard across the chest to move him away from the entrance. But that punch Ray lands is barely more than a minor inconvenience to this bastard. In return, he tries to grab Ray by his head, but Ray ducks backward just in time, barely escaping. The bald bastard then follows up with a punch that sends Ray skidding across the floor. The bald bastard acknowledges that Ray indeed has some solid reflexes for a kid his age. Meanwhile, Ray internalizes that this guy is packing some serious power. The bald bastard starts throwing punch after punch, but Ray manages to dodge them all, moving left and right with ease. While Ray might be able to dodge, he knows he can't keep it up forever. He needs to figure out something before he gets knocked out. That's when he notices a gap in the bastard's defense, and quickly strikes his chest. As soon as his hand connects, he intensifies the fire in his palm. And that little moment of distraction is enough for Ray to vanish from the spot like he was never there. The other shitheads guarding the place quickly scatter around the warehouse, thinking that since that brat fought Humphrey, he won't be able to go far. Ray starts to feel concerned, because at this rate he's indeed going to get caught. But then he notices a stone and throws it to draw their attention away. Those goofy-ass shitheads take the bait and begin running in the opposite direction, while Ray makes his escape. He's finally succeeded in looting the infamous Hector Group's warehouse, but he knows he's dead if they catch him. Though Ray isn't afraid of dying, what he fears is that if he's not around, the kids won't last long in this unforgiving world. Suddenly, the bastards catch up to him, so Ray picks up his speed. But soon he finds himself facing a dead end. Now that he's cornered, the bastards pull out their weapons and tell him to come here and spit out what he stole before they start poking holes in his stomach. Since he doesn't see Humphrey around, Ray feels confident that he can win, so he starts charging some mana in his fists. One of the bastards charges at him, but Ray sidesteps and delivers a solid uppercut to the bastard. Then comes the other guy rushing, but Ray quickly grabs the bastard's dagger hand and produces some electricity, frying the bastard's head and leaving him down for the count. Suddenly, Ray hears more of these guys coming toward him. It looks like they won't stop pursuing him until he's caught, and Ray isn't sure if he can use his magic indefinitely. This is when he notices the garbage bin behind him and quickly takes refuge inside. The bastards also search the area, but they find no one other than a few of their companions, so they continue forward, determined to find him. They can't afford to lose him. With the rain pouring heavily, the footsteps start to fade, which means no matter what they do, Ray is confident they won't find him here. He decides to stay in the bin for the night because if they follow him to the bridge, the kids will be in danger as well. With that, he spends the entire night in that bin. The next day arrives, and he wakes up to the light seeping through the cracks. He hops out of the dustbin, but is immediately exposed by a bastard standing just outside the bin. Ray can tell just by the color of his vessel that this dude is absolutely angry, and our boy isn't sure if he can handle this bastard alone, given he hasn't fully recovered yet. The bastard finally lunges, trying to kill Ray. But that's when my guy also pulls a dagger of his own and swings it at the bastard. However, the bastard evades the attack and swings back at his opponent. While attempting to dodge the attack, Ray loses his balance and trips. This gives that bastard the perfect opportunity to deliver the final blow, but just before the shiny dagger reaches Ray's eye socket, someone shoots the bastard down, killing him on the spot. The bastard behind the trigger is another sassy guy who seems to already know about Ray. This guy is black-haired Niles, the 17th Street boss. He can't help but warn Ray about the dangerously close call he just had. If the gunshot was even delayed for a second, Ray would have been pushing up daisies. Ray, in response, questions him why he is here, since Niles is usually not awake this early. To which Niles says yes. He claims to have heard rumors that Hector's guys were on the prowl. He then notices the canned food Ray is hiding under his hoodie, and is sure that Ray must have swiped the haul under Hector's nose. For that, he can't help but call out our boy for his bold move. Ray in return reciprocates with a thanks, but Niles clarifies that it wasn't a compliment, so there's nothing to feel proud of. Internally, Ray is unsure how to handle Niles. Because people like Niles have emotions so monotonous that their vessels never really fill up, so he can't tell what this dude is even thinking. Niles, on the other hand, warns him to be careful, or else he'll die if he continues pulling stunts like this. There are people he should not be mingling with, and Ray should know better. But for our boy, endangering his life is still better than starving to death. Well, Niles has no room to argue about that, so he just reminds Ray that they're both equal now. Ray saved him once, and Niles in return saved Ray. But Ray claims that he never intended to save him. Ray merely mistook Niles for supplies when he was floating down the river. But still though, the blackhead still can't deny the fact that he ended up living because of this little brat. Still, as far as Ray remembers, he's already been repaid for the favor. In order to provide some context for what they're talking about, we transition a year back in time. There, Ray happened to pull Niles out of the river. Apparently, Niles used to be an executive of the 46th sector, but he was betrayed. Or at least, that's what Niles claims to have happened. Though Ray is sure it's not a lie, especially since Niles was the one who taught him lessons as a repayment for saving his life. This is when Ray brings up the important question. He asks Niles if he can join an organization. If he has to be specific, he wants to join Niles' organization. The only reason Ray wants to join the organization is to keep those kids safe. Niles does not give any immediate response. He just walks away from the scene and stands behind a wall. He then asks an unexpected question, asking Ray if he can use magic. Ray is shocked and questions him how he knows this much. To which Niles does not respond outwardly, but inwardly, he's very intrigued to realize his hunch is right on the money. Initially, he had seen Ray lighting up a fire without a lighter. Ray, on the other hand, continues to question him about how he knew he could use magic. Niles finally speaks, claiming that one fellow magician had told him that there is mana in the air, which is used for magic, and that there are only a handful of people who can detect and use mana. Ray then asks him if his fellow magician also mentioned something about colors, to which Niles does not remember any mention of colors, but his fellow magician did claim that mana is invisible and cannot be seen with the naked eye. This sparks Ray's curiosity even more, because he can clearly see these different types of colors in the air. Ray questions him once again, asking if he might be forgetting some crucial detail, but this only agitates Niles, as he believes he has already told Ray everything he knows, and at this point, Ray is just trying to push his buttons by asking the same thing over and over. Back to the topic at hand. Ray wants to know if his request to join the organization will be approved or not, to which Niles declines his request for some obvious reasons. When Ray inquires about the reason behind this blunt rejection, Niles once again gives Ray the silent treatment. In order to learn the real reason behind Niles' hesitation to take Ray into the organization, here's a bit of background. You see, all the sectors are along the Elton River. If you go up to the river, you'll arrive at other sectors, and you could probably escape the slums and find a better life there. So, Niles believes that it would be too much of a waste for a kid with such abilities to die here. Well, we now know the reason behind Niles' rejection, though he does not say this out loud to Ray. Instead, he simply asks Ray if the thought of leaving the 50th sector has ever crossed his mind. He even offers to help find him a car if he plans to leave this place. Ray, however, simply declines the proposition as he has kids to take care of. But Niles assures him that he is already planning to open an orphanage here, so Ray can leave the kids in his capable hands. He promises to give a better life and make sure they are not dying in the streets. Meanwhile, Ray can't figure out if this guy is bluffing or telling the truth, especially since his vessel color doesn't change at all. Though Ray is not doubting Niles, especially since this guy has always kept his word. Ray then warns Niles about Hector's group, because those guys seem to be preparing to start a war. Ray knows this for a fact because he had seen them receive truckloads of weapons. But it looks like Niles knew about this already. Not to mention, the fact that he just killed one of their guys is a definite declaration of war. Ray reminds him that the people in the stores will suffer if he loses the war. Suddenly, Niles' driver calls him out, reminding him that they should be leaving now. With that, as Niles makes his way inside the car, he reveals to Ray that it's going to be a war zone here, so Ray better find another hideout if he can. Before leaving, he throws this little potion bottle to our boy and tells him to heal his injured ear with this. With that, he leaves the place in his car. We then get back to 17th Street near Central Square, where we meet one of the kids from the Underpass Children's Group. The kid gets excited to see Ray finally back, but his happiness quickly morphs into worries when he notices Ray injured. But Ray quickly tries to assure the sobbing kid that he just fell, nothing else. While the poor kid wipes his tears off while feeling relieved and happy that he was not into fights, Ray notices this whirlwind of emotions inside this kid. To think that a single person can feel so many emotions at once is something that never fails to fascinate him. He then hands over all of the canned food to the kids and tells her to head to the tent first and also inform Pale that he will be back soon. By the way, this kid's name is Josephine. While the kid walks his own path, Ray turns to the old woman, Viola, and asks her if she told Josephine anything. Apparently, this old woman is blind, which explains why she didn't react when Ray appeared in the scene. She is a storyteller. She responds to Ray's question by answering that she was just telling her about the rainbows. Ray gently cautions the old woman to perhaps not always tell the kids these fantastical stories, because he doesn't want them to develop feelings of inadequacy, and it could make them less content with the streets they are currently living in. But Viola believes that children should be encouraged to imagine and dream beyond their immediate surroundings. Ray takes note of the color of her vessel, and it appears to be purple. But he is not sure what feeling this purple color might represent, because he has never seen this color in anyone else besides Viola. Ray then warns her about the impending conflict that is looming on the horizon, and advises her to consider moving to another street before things escalate. After this little exchange, our boy walks away, while Viola can't help but to notice how considerate Ray is for a child. The next morning, our boy runs some errands as a delivery boy. When the shop owner opens the gate, he is surprised to see Ray in front of him, since he was expecting Ron to show up with deliveries. While my guy pretends not to know, deep down in his mind, he can't help but to think how that unfortunate fatty got both his legs broken, so he is essentially a helpless person. Ray then politely inquires the shopkeeper if he is not planning to evacuate, as there won't be any customers if a conflict arises. But the shop owner claims that he has nothing other than this store, and as for the war, he is quite certain that it's not going to happen. Hearing this, Ray gets intrigued and inquires about the reasoning, to which the shop owner explains that Hector's group and Neil's are currently in discussion, so if things are resolved peacefully, there won't be a conflict. Right at that moment, the gate of the room where the meeting was going on opens up, and we see a group of men from Hector's group. The man with scars all over his face is actually the leader of 18th Street, whose name is Hector, the leader of the Hector's group. My guy quickly pulls his hoodie over his face. Hector, on the other hand, is intrigued by the fact that a child is working in this place while all the adults have fled. He then places his hand over Ray's neck as a gesture of appreciation for the hard work Ray is putting in. He then further gives the little one some coins and tells him to treat himself well. With that, they proceed to leave. But it is then that the bald man Humphrey notices Ray's injured ears, so he quickly turns towards our boy. It doesn't take long for Ray to sense the shift in the atmosphere, so he quickly hides his ear because he knows he has been recognized. But before the bald man can react, his boss calls out to him, telling him to stop standing there idly. Eventually, they all leave the place in their nice car. Meanwhile, Ray knows that Humphrey had recognized the wound on his ear, but he is not sure why that man left without saying anything. Ray and that shop owner then hurry to Niels to inquire about the outcome of the negotiations. And sadly enough, the only thing Niels has to say is that the negotiations failed. So the conflict is inevitable. The shop owner is dismayed to hear this news. Niels then elaborates that the terms Hector was demanding were simply unreasonable. He basically wanted Niels's entire organization to submit to his control, which is even worse than engaging in a conflict with those men. He then apologizes to both the shop owner and Ray and advises them to remain cautious and stay in the hideout. After leaving the shop, Ray walks alone through the streets, As he does, he reflects how difficult it would be to navigate the streets if the conflict were to break out. In order to prepare for the impending crisis, he decides to gather as much food as possible beforehand. Suddenly, he notices Humphrey in the car, which Ray finds very suspicious because he had never seen a car like his in Sector 50, so he decides to investigate. Later, we find ourselves at the entrance to Hector's group on 18th Street. The big boss himself, Hector, is acting as nothing more than a subordinate in the presence of this man who emerges from the car. The man's presence is commanding, and it's still unknown who this figure actually is. The monocle over his left eye only makes him even more stand out. Even Ray doesn't seem to recognize this man. He then takes note of this man's vessel's color, which is dark blue, and calling it black wouldn't be incorrect either. That color resembles the mana of golems when they move. Also, he is curious about the rings around this man's vessel. Not only that, there is a significant amount of mana surrounding the rings as well, and it's as if he is using those rings to contain the mana from escaping. He is certain that that man is dangerous, and he needs to inform Niels about it. The scene transitions to 17th Street, Niels' group, where we can see that Niels' men are also preparing for the impending battle. Ray also arrives there and startles this guard by appearing out of the blue, because he is unsure how Ray even got inside the base. To which Ray states that the gate was open. He then inquires about the whereabouts of Niels, to which the man explains that his boss went out to prepare for the war, and it's dangerous, so Ray should also be leaving as well. Since Niels is not here, Ray decides to simply convey his message through this guard, but he is unsure how to explain to this guard that those guys have a magic user in their ranks. So, he simply tells the guard to relay the message to Niels that he should be wary of the man with a monocle. Later, Ray returns to the kids in the tent, but Ray sits outside accompanied by Pale. Pale questions him about his opinion regarding who is going to emerge victorious in this conflict. Well, Ray is uncertain about which side to support, especially since both groups seem to be evenly matched. Personally, Ray is rooting for Niels, because he believes it's the only way the safety of the children can be assured. If Hector wins this war, the street children will be sold into slavery. Suddenly, they hear a terrifying noise, which puts Ray on high alert. The scene then quickly shifts to 17th Street, where Niels' soldiers are trying their best to fight off against these golems, but all of that barrage of bullets has no effect on these creatures. In retaliation, the creature unleashes a massive amount of dark blue magical energy that decimates everything in its path. And as if that is not enough, the golem dispatches those men with his bare hands like they were mere tomatoes. The one manipulating those golems is, of course, this monocle-wearing bastard. He is feeling very pleased with his creations, and further commands them to eliminate everything here. We then transition back under the bridge where the kids live. While Ray is planning to join the fray, Pale quickly grabs him by the hand and stops him from going. As they are arguing about who should go and assess the situation, their skirmish ends up waking Josephine up. But Pale quickly tells her that they will be back soon enough, so she should go back inside the tent and have some sleep. Finally, Pale concedes to our boy's insistence. He decides to stay with the children here, while he gives Ray the green light to venture further. He also tells him not to go too far and to return as soon as he figures out what is happening. After promising to return as soon as possible, Ray finally reaches the scene, and everything is in a state of chaos. The aftermath of the battle is brutal. Everything is engulfed in flames, and the soldiers are scattered around with missing limbs. The one red-haired soldier we had seen before still seems to be alive. He reveals to our boy that those bastards had brought golems with them, and the man with the monocle was controlling them. He then warns our boy to flee before his life is extinguished. He dies on the spot, as he is also torn apart into two equal pieces. It breaks Ray's heart to witness this unnecessary bloodshed. He closes the poor soldier's eyes, grabs the dagger from the ground, and decides to proceed. He is certain that the way things are going, Niels is bound to lose, so he wants to assist him in any way he can. While Ray is occupied, we shift back to the bridge at the same time, where all the children live. Well, it appears that not even the children were spared. They have been brutally slaughtered, and only Pale remains, holding Josephine in his arms. The one behind all this bloodshed is one of the golems we had seen before. The soulless bastard begins to coalesce this dark blue energy in the palm of his hand to unleash it upon Pale, while Pale, on the other hand, sheds his last remaining tears as he wishes for Ray not to return. The 17th Street of Central Plaza had just gone up in flames. The man had arrived exclusively late to the horrific scene. All he could see were the corpses of Niles' underlings, but strangely, his own corpse was nowhere to be found, indicating that he was still alive. A loud rumbling took his attention from behind. Ray turned around quickly, realizing the direction it came from. Understanding that, he ran towards the tent. When he got here, panting and exhausted from all the running, it was yet another dreadful sight. He witnessed the remains of someone right up ahead of the golem monster. Filled with rage, Ray moved to attack this monster with his flaming sword. But the monster quickly turned back with its sharp senses and executed a heavy gut punch against the boy's stomach. Bro came at him with a full Mike Tyson swing. Anyway, Ray felt immense pain as he crashed into a wall. On the brink of defeat, he doesn't want to give up and hopes to assure his loved ones are all safe. It was at this moment that a voice called out in his mind. He relived the memories of the children, the people who adored him every time he came back. It empowered him for a moment, before those mellow memories became a terrifying nightmare. All of those children had been brutally murdered. Lorraine, Leia, Corden, Miles, Josephine, and Pale were all gone. Ray pitifully denied the reality, reaching out for them. He can't accept the loss of their lives without having to repay them for their kindness. But it matters very little since the silver-haired boy is about to meet his own end here. He hears a familiar sound, the same sound that he heard during a fight. This was the bastard golem who became responsible for ending their lives. And now, it is preparing a blast to end Ray too. These helpless children as well as Niles's men, and even the people in the street. The bloodbath that followed was all because of this monster. Ray took it upon himself to exact revenge no matter the cost. He uses every fiber of his being, every last bit of his energy, pooling it together until he has enough to stand. But Ray's body didn't obey until a powerful car was chucked at the golem from out of nowhere, sending it crashing away. From inside the vehicle comes out Niles, who rescues Ray. Thankfully, the kid hasn't received any major injuries, but the boy is dreadful and discouraged to share the news of the deceased children. Niles horrifically turns and realizes what went down. He apologizes to the child for being too late to the scene. Ray doesn't want to accept it as his fault. Niles, realizing that the boy is deeply grieving and blaming himself for their lives, hugs him for comfort. As for his subordinates, they're all dead. The one responsible is definitely Hector, who called mages from the outside to kill them all. The question is, what's he going to do now? Niles intends to return to the street in the hopes of scouting for survivors. Before he's about to talk about his next part of the plan, Niles is shot with a damn laser beam right through his chest. Ray's eyes turn to shock as he sees the golem standing behind, having just dealt the final move on Niles. Poor guy's got a hole in his chest and he's still smiling. What a man. Niles collapses in the boy's arms, with Ray despairingly calling for his name. He doesn't even know what happened just now. His heart beats incredibly fast as he remembers training with Niles and sharing all his memories. The boy's heart beats with a vengeance to confront the damning golem who killed off everyone he cared about. The golem aims to kill the boy, but this time, Ray's the one fuming with the thoughts of killing everything in his path. Black rain poured. There was loss, defeat, and guilt. But more than anything, what Ray wanted the most was to escape from this horrifying nightmare and wake up to correct everything. But this was just the reality he could do nothing about. The golem pointed its hand towards him, aiming to finish the boy. The boy in response does the same, his powers charging in a bright red. Both of them prepared their one final attack and at last released the two beams. The destructive beams collided with each other, but one thing was different about Ray. He was an emotion, not a robot. He had reasons and emotions to fight for. That's why his attack became overwhelming for the golem. The fiery storm of hellfire erupted and engulfed the creature, reducing it to nothing but rubble. By the time his attack ended, molten remains were carved into the earth's flesh. Next, the boy hurried to try and help Niles to wake up. He didn't want him to die no matter what happened. Interestingly, Niles was still breathing his final moments. He is in extreme agony and never thought he'd get a peaceful death. But the last thing he expected was that he was going to die today of all things. Reflecting that he's got no reflections in his life, Niles calmly accepts that he accomplished a lot from where he started off. But he made the mistake of struggling much later in life than he should have, which makes him regret and feel guilt about the situation. Niles was just around the boy's age when it happened. Ray wants to leave and find medicine from the car, but he is stopped by the much older man. He wants the kid to do one thing, and that is to leave this wretched place. Niles wishes for the boy to live a better life elsewhere. They've always shared a close connection as if they were brothers. But now, Niles only wants the best for Ray, to reach the top instead of staying at the bottom. Saying those words, the last bit of life extinguishes from Niles's body as his hand slips away from the boy's palm. Now he was no more in this world. Ray only had moments to accept what had just taken place. Before long he was filled with fury and despair, roaring into the rain of the first emotions he ever felt. After that, the kid sat near the wreckage and didn't move for a while. He's still in pain and shock, unable to describe what happened as anything but a dream. Just recalling the horrific massacre of yesterday, the people he lost and his emotions spiraling like crazy. Something was different about the situation. Ray casts a bit of flame in his palm, realizing that his emotions are directly correlated to the strength of his fire spells. But also overdoing it can easily extinguish his spells too, which happens just now. Ray realizes that he can't wait any longer and decides to move. The deceased bodies of his loved ones have all been cared for. His next mission is to exact revenge, no longer caring about the moral consequences of his actions. Back to the 17th Street, the pile of bodies are being collected. Everyone now knows that Hector won by a long shot, and that everything here will get so much more difficult from now. The scumbags make fun of Niles for not accepting their offer. Ray's already here, having located his targets with a knife in his hand. Suddenly, he's grabbed by someone from behind and instantly swipes the man's throat clean with a single slash. But that slash wasn't deep enough to kill this guy, and he tries his best to reason with the kid. Ray doesn't care about who he's fighting, as his only goal is to annihilate the entirety of the Hector group as a whole. He slashes the hell out of this guy's body, giving him a shock to the system. He can't fathom how this kid is even stronger than he was before. If he doesn't respond properly, Ray's going to beat him decisively and end his life. So he willingly allows himself to get stabbed in the shoulder, which is a shock to Ray. But this moment is met with an equal trade-off as the man hammers Ray down with a powerful punch. He understands how foolish and reckless the boy is for risking his own life for revenge. That's why, at this moment, the man gives him an offer that's going to please Ray. Egghead reasons that he shouldn't die like a dog in an effort to exact his revenge. The boy gets up and learns from the man that he's been closely observed for a while now. He wants the kid to hear him out on this one time. Silent Humphrey. They call Egghead that because he's the most silent assassin out there. And now Humphrey is the one who's making the face of desperation, which is proof enough that he isn't going to deceive the boy. Ray accepts hearing him out and learns that Humphrey wants the kid to leave the sector. His reason is to find the man's brother, who Hector sold off in the City of Mages. Hector mentioned that if Humphrey worked under him for a decade, he'd reveal the location of his brother. That's the sole reason he's been working for him. And right around this time, he believes his brother should be around Ray's age. But it isn't clear to the boy why he should take on the request in the first place. Humphrey finally reveals Ray's secret. He understands that the kid knows how to use magic. It comes as a shock, but Humphrey continues that he was certain after seeing his fight in the warehouse. Despite the boy's small use of magic right now, it still won't be enough to defeat Hector as he stands. After all, Hector is always guarded by an extremely powerful mage, so the chances of killing him on a whim are next to nothing. The pitch-black mana emanating from that mage is fearful enough. Humphrey describes this image as a demon. On the off chance that someone from their side tries to betray them, that mage freezes them entirely. Humphrey vividly recalls a guy suffocating to death with a bowl of water placed around his head. That mage is just too powerful, extremely powerful. That's why he wants the kid to leave this place for the time being, so that he can exact his revenge much later in life when he has the chance. Ray can't deny Humphrey's rationale after all. He's yet to learn magic and only used it by what he assumed was right. If he's fighting an excerpt mage, he's going to have zero chances of winning that encounter. The City of Mages is near the upstream of the Elton River, and only mages are allowed to step foot inside. Humphrey gives the boy all the saved-up money he collected over his life. The same goes for information on his brother's personality and characteristics. Ray is shocked that he's being entrusted with the money. After all, he could always betray Humphrey. But after seeing the boy for a while, this guy knows that the kid is one to maintain his promises. And he's seen enough from the boy to conclude that he can easily advance to a higher-level sector. Humphrey supports Ray the same way Niles once did. He insists the boy hurry and come to a decision as they have little time. Ray makes up his own condition. He wants Humphrey to properly take care of the corpses at the underpass, and then he'll search for his brother. It's an easy deal and Humphrey easily accepts. Ray decides to go, claiming that he'll return in one piece. Yes, the One Piece is real. Ray ran as fast as he could to ensure no one followed him. He arrives before Grandma Viola, tossing her a coin to ask a quick question. The granny happily inquires what the boy asks of her. Ray wants to confirm if the story about the rainbow is true or not. He wonders if he'll finally be able to make a wish upon encountering a rainbow. Ray dives into an old memory that he shared with one of the underpass kids. He joyously talked about the tale of the rainbow and how anyone would be able to make a wish if they found the point where a rainbow touches the ground. Ray thought about it with seriousness for some reason, and that leads to the current day. The granny concludes that rainbows do exist, even if the wishing aspect is ignored. The boy senses that there's no hesitation in her mana, always remaining a clear purple like always. The kid remembers when he asked Humphrey, who was reminded of the time he was asked about a rainbow from a kid too. That same mage was also looking for a rainbow, which also means they have proof of their existence. The boy questions Viola if he will be able to resurrect the day upon discovering the rainbow's end. Instead of giving him a clear answer, she ambiguously states that anyone can make any wish come true, so maybe it's true. Does it feel like the granny is gaslighting him here? Because I really can't tell. What do you guys think? Viola claims that rainbows are hard to find and nobody knows where they are. But her answer is enough for Ray, who leaves and departs Viola with a request to find a new place. Anyway, Ray is now on the outskirts of Sector 50. He's observing the coordinates that Niles wrote down. Reading them, he locates the vehicle. Niles prepared a 4-seater sedan just in case. The boy reaches for the door handle when one of Hector's lackeys comes out to catch him. He wonders if Niles gave him an order to retrieve the car, and just to fuck with the boy's emotions, he provokes him by asking about Niles' emotions. Ray was confident that he wasn't being chased by any more of Hector's men, but it turns out that one caught up to him. Regardless, he can't waste time and clutches the door handle to get inside. The man bolts at him, and before Ray's about to close the door, the man catches it open. He roars at the kid to open the door. Ray's already exhausted much of his mana, so his strengthening magic isn't working wonders here. He forces a fire spell, precisely aiming at the guy into a finger beam before blasting his brains off. He kicks the corpse away and steps on the pedal full speed. Ray's finally going to experience what life is like outside of Sector 50. Having arrived someplace far away, the kid comes to a stop before inspecting the car's trunk. He's rather surprised that Niles was so well prepared that he stashed enough water and food supplies in the back. Still, it's going to come to use since he won't be arriving into the next sector before a bunch of days pass. That night, Ray lit himself a fire and decided that it was important to get more information on magic in the next sector. As for what he knows for certain, Ray understands that there are 2 forms of mana. The first is red mana, which can be used without any preparation. The second mana requires numerous colors to be utilized all at once. Mana isn't just easy to manipulate. However, after channeling certain emotions, he can utilize some of it more easily. Rage is just one example. His activation trigger is Rage for now, and that's how the boy is able to cast that kind of mana. Unfortunately, he has hit his limit. Anytime he loses concentration on his emotions, the mana ends up slipping away. So he decides to play with the combinations next. Forging a bunch of different colors in his palm, the boy observes something interesting taking place before his eyes. But unfortunately, nothing becomes a product of this combination of mana. Certain types repel each other, and combining colors requires immense effort, which also takes a toll on his mental energy. But in response, some combinations work well in unison. He wants to play around with the experimentation for now. It wasn't as needed before, but his circumstances are now different. Ray has got every reason to do so, in order to get what he wants. He drives around before coming to another stop the next day. Today, he was able to play around with a bunch of different combinations to cast ice, wind, and earth-type magic. The boy wonders if he can utilize mana inside his vessel and then use it whenever needed. It would make his conjuring process a lot easier if that happened. It's kind of like mana circles surrounding a mage's vessel. Ray is ready to find something like that after he reaches Sector 49. As for Sector 50, let's see how things are holding up near the bridge. Hector's men are searching around, but they've found no traces of the golem. Hector suddenly orders one of them to hold the end of his cane. This guy is sweating bullets while apologizing to his master for failing the task. But Hector's shown to be a very no-bullshit guy who doesn't like men that fail him. The poor guy taps the end of his cane before his hand experiences a jolt of electrifying pain. He is quickly turned into a block of ice, as an example for others. Hector then pushes the statue down, calling him a useless piece of trash. Another one of his men reports that they've found traces of the golem around the area. Hector's intrigued to find that there's a certain kind of mana lingering in the air. That means some powerful magic was used. He could also sense mana lingering from nearby. When he goes up to inspect the traces, Hector asks his men if someone actually lived here. The underling reports that a bunch of street children lived here. Orphans that are probably no longer here to avoid war. But Hector is shocked. He can't stomach the thought of an orphan using such magic. The very thought of it makes him succumb to a maniacal laughter. The fact that one boy was able to conjure a powerful magic and its configurations all by himself. The very thought of it seems impossible. So he clings to a more reasonable theory, that another mage must have come here to destroy the golem. He wants his men to investigate what happened underneath. Some part of Hector thinks that if an orphan kid did pull off the impossible, then that boy must have the potential of a genius archmage, and could become a force to be reckoned with. It's about time, but finally, Ray has arrived in Sector 49. Before he came to Sector 49, the boy had a talk with Niles before he died. He learned about Sector 42 being in a similar state of chaos, and also learned that it was much bigger in size. The buildings were bigger, and there were streets. But it wasn't anything special. But if you go upstream, the sectors experienced notable changes. That was the case for the 49th sector. Ray, having stepped foot here, is shocked to remark about its size. There's also a lot of weird things going on around him. There are no golems in sight either, so he wonders if they're home to only the 50th sector. The boy moves along, hearing many people chat about their lives. Arriving at the 36th street, he has confirmed that there are way too many streets here than compared to his previous sector. Ray wants to advance his pace and learn as much as possible about magic, especially the mage Hector and his vessel circles. That's going to become his key to exact his revenge. Then there's his objective to look into the prismatic colors and the city of mages. Not to mention that he has to get a job to acquire money. While he's got the money from Humphrey to survive for a while, this journey is going to need more than that. Ray suddenly spots a bookstore in front of him. The Veronica bookstore, the name itself is enough to draw the boy's attention. But he's never known a bookstore and doesn't know what it means. Recalling one other conversation with Niles, the boy learned about many things from him. He learned how to read for the most part, so he's eager to explore this bookstore. Inside, he sees squares filled with letters to label them. Ray hasn't ever known about something like this before. Suddenly, one voice calls to him. It's a red-haired girl who accuses him of breaking the window and stealing her books again. She's seriously annoyed that this guy has shown up to steal from her again. But Ray doesn't know why this damsel is in distress, or why she's accusing him. He learns that the books are the items inside the store. The girl emphasizes her point and orders him to leave. He can see a plethora of colors emanating from her. Emotions of excitement, joy, discomfort, and annoyance. The boy wonders if it's even humanly possible to feel so many emotions all at once. She's out here screaming at him like a madwoman, while Ray is questioning what she's ranting about. The boy calls her a weirdo, which gets on her nerves as she becomes supremely angry and tries to remind him of her father's status. Ray doesn't want to deal with a problematic child, so he leaves on his own. Back to the streets, he sharply observes a bunch of kids looking at him with a cautious gaze. The boy understands, because he's a stranger who's just entered their sector after all. Ray now understands that this part isn't any different from what happens in Sector 50. Back to his car, he collects his thoughts. Ray has explored a bunch of streets, and yet he ultimately failed in searching for something related to magic. He wants to invest his search into wider areas tomorrow, until he hears something nearby. It's the same kids again, and they've come here to beat him up. Ray isn't surprised, and senses 4 of these guys from his car. The kids all draw near until they reach the door handle. Their intention isn't to kill, but to knock him out without any noise. They also want to snatch the car keys and steal the food. But before any of the kids can make a move, Ray shatters the window and takes down one of them with ease. With one guy down, the rest are startled. Ray jumps out to target the blue hoodie kid. He knocks the kid out with one swing across his chest. That's 2 down. The third kid attempts to kill Ray with the full swing of his metal pipe. Unfortunately, he greatly underestimated his opponent, as Ray catches the pipe with little to no trouble and tosses it away. The boy, now intimidated, orders Ray not to draw any closer. Ray, on the other hand, fearsome as ever, instructs the children to hold their teeth shut. Then, he proceeds to beat the ever-living shit out of them until they're reduced to a sorry state. After the beating, he questions how many streets these kids own. The kids go all quiet, until Ray uses a forceful tone to demand an answer from them. With his hands crossed, projecting fear over the goons, Ray repeats his question. The beat-up kids look miserable. They can't even look at Ray straight. Seeing as they refuse to answer, our boy demonstrates a little more force. He singles out one of the goons, and the fool immediately cracks under pressure. He confesses that they have control over 3 streets inside Sector 49 in total. Ray presses for specifics, and the captive lists streets 23rd through 25th as their territory. In his chest are mana colors indicating anxiety, uneasiness, and fear. Those are telltale signs of a liar, and liars get their hands stomped out. As Ray mutilates the goon's hand with his foot, the other 2 watch in fear as blood paints the ground. After getting some good old-fashioned torture done, Ray turns his attention to the other 2. Locking onto the meeker and more weak-willed goon, Ray seems a little too good at interrogations. This time, he did not need to cause any pain. The goon just swears to tell the truth and nothing but the truth in fear of what might happen to him. According to him, they run 14 streets with 52 members in total. Their leader goes by the name Kedrick, and their base is an abandoned factory. Ray is not expecting these kids to run 14 streets. They are bigger than he initially thought. He orders the goon to raise his head and introduce himself. With a voice crack, the goon stammers his name, Neshu. According to this rat, the boss ordered them to beat Ray within an inch of his life and steal whatever food, money, and supplies he had. The boss also shared a warning, saying that he is always watching everything. Hidden in Ray's blind spot, the 4th hidden goon makes his move. He jumps from the car's roof and aims a blade at Ray's back. Unfazed by the incoming threat to his life, Ray's mana boiled and stirred. He manipulates the blue wind mana, knocking the ambusher away without even lifting a finger. On top of that, the wind kicked a lot of dust in the air, blinding the knife-wielding goon. The next thing you know, he's out like a light with 2 clean hits to the face and body. Ray slowly steps in and watches as the ambusher bleeds in agony. He grabs the sneaky fucker by the hair and lifts him up like he weighs nothing. Ray wants these goons to go back to their boss and return the threat. He can see everything too. After that little incident, Ray continues researching Sector 49. Just like in his home sector, the people here don't know about magic at all. He also learned about books and bundles of paper with all kinds of written information inside. If there are all kinds of books, there are bound to be ones about magic, right? While he quietly traverses the streets, some unremarkable side characters invite him to a less crowded place. Ray's defenses instinctively come up, but the side characters assure him that they did not come here to fight. When asked if they belong to the same group as the kids that he trashed the other day, the trio truthfully answers that they are. Side character number 1 is quite impressed that a single person can beat Anthony, Horn, and Melber half to death in such a grand fashion. The boss shares the same sentiment, so he wants to meet with Ray. Side character number 1 pulls out a note. Unfortunately, the 3 of them cannot read at all. They are ordered to say exactly what's written on the note, but none of them are literate. Running out of patience, Ray swipes the note out of their hands to read it himself. As he skims over the short note, the side characters look at him like a mystical being. Given that he can read, he might as well be. In their gang, only the boss and someone named Waver can read. The note was simple and confident. It is an assurance that Ray will never starve if he works for the gang. After seeing the note, he turns to the useless side characters and asks how they go about picking their boss. Just like most groups in the lower sectors, the process is simple. They pick the leader based on strength. The strongest becomes the boss. Accepting their invitation, Ray led the way to meet with this boss they kept yapping about. After a few minutes of walking, they reached Kedrick Group's base, the abandoned factory. Side character number 1 slowly opens the gate and the tension is palpable. As soon as Ray enters, he immediately feels a similar vibe to the seedy orgs in his home sector. A young man chilling by the homeless bonfire notices the arrival of their guest of honor. Wearing a flashy jacket, decent drip, dark bags under his eyes, and messy hair, the boss stood up in attention. Ray introduced himself and noticed something odd about Kedrick's loadout. While there have been times when mana flows out from junk, Ray has never seen an object emit as much mana as Kedrick's ring. The boss sits back on his throne and offers the opposite seat to Ray as a valued guest. Ray did not have to look back to feel the murderous glances the goons were shooting him. He is not fazed by all that, though. Kedrick is just making sure to assert dominance on his home turf. For such a young boss, his leadership is surprisingly proficient. Seeing Ray stay calm under pressure, Kedrick is impressed with his nerves of steel. When asked where he came from and what the deal with the car was, Ray answered truthfully. As soon as he says that he came from Sector 50, the goons were taken aback. None of them had ever heard of someone coming up from Sector 50 before. They have heard of people coming down from above, but never the other way around. Kedrick makes his men shut their traps with a wave of a hand. He's become even more fascinated with Ray and his story. The kid is more than qualified to enter their organization. Kedrick then explains that he is planning on eventually joining a bigger org. They are in talks with a super famous org from Sector 45 known as Merc Red. They have drafted an agreement to get absorbed into Merc Red's ranks once they reach 66 members. For Kedrick and any random street rat in Sector 49, that is enough of a reason to join the gang. It is an opportunity to raise their status after all. While Ray is quite fascinated by the agreement and the idea of joining an org, he can't completely buy into it because he refuses to work for someone weaker than himself. Upon disrespecting Kedrick to his face, the atmosphere in the abandoned factory shifts. Kedrick's smile vanishes. With crazy eyes staring Ray down, he asks if this kid from Sector 50 just called him weak. Ignoring the rising tensions, Ray explains that strength determines everything where he came from. Leaders are judged by their power and not by how well they talk. One of the goons interjected to curse Ray out. Kedrick's hand, wearing the ring, swoops in to grab the goon's neck, tightening it close to the point of crushing. The boss is lashing out, and he hates being interrupted by underlings who speak out of turn. The goon pathetically apologizes while he is being terrorized by a psychopathic boss. From where he is sitting, Ray can clearly see the colors of strengthening magic coiling around Kedrick's mysterious ring. No matter what angle Ray views, it does not seem like the murderous boss is using magic himself. That ring is the only thing even remotely magical in this decrepit place. Getting bored of the violent display, Ray asked one of the goons when the tantrums were going to end. Quietly considering his options, he reckons that he can break that ring if given the chance. Fortunately, he didn't have to make a move as the ring's power slowly died down on its own. With Kedrick's calmer personality taking over again, he released his underling from the painful chokehold. He scratches his head and innocently apologizes for getting a little too heated. These sudden shifts in emotion are not normal at all. Now, they can discuss what Ray meant when he insinuated that he's stronger than the org's current leader. All they have to do is test that thought, right? When Ray doubles down on his insults, Kedrick's throne zooms past inches from his head. The ring's power has taken over again, causing the boss to go absolutely feral. He even asks his underlings if they are thinking the same thing. The poor goons hurriedly glaze their boss, telling him that he was the strongest. Ray is now certain that the ring is reacting to Kedrick's emotions. Seeing how sudden the shift in emotion is when the mana from the ring is cut off, it seems like Kedrick doesn't even know what that accessory is doing for him. Since Ray wants to see his strength, he proposes a fight for the leadership position. The loser works for the winner and all that jazz. Kedrick smiles, obviously liking the idea. He sets the time for the duel in 1 week. The boss wants to make a show out of it. He wants to fight while everyone's watching, including guys from other gangs. That way, they will be certain who's stronger in front of countless witnesses. Before he goes, Ray asks Kedrick where he got the ring. The boss playfully promises to let Ray know the answer to that question if he wins. But given how heavy the stakes are, Kedrick won't let something like that happen. The very next day, Ray roams the streets with the thought of the magical ring still lingering in his mind. Eventually, someone threw a rock from his blind spot. With his unnatural sensitivity and inhuman reaction time, he caught the rock before it hit his head. More side characters from the other gangs of Sector 49 have come to mess with Ray. They even have spooky weapons on them. Ray is stuck in the middle of a sketchy alleyway, surrounded by armed and dangerous gangsters on both sides. They kept on yapping about running these streets and fixing Ray's attitude. Our boy had already had enough of this useless blabber. If they are going to fight, there's no need to waste any more time. As expected, he made quick work of these untrained brats wielding bats. No matter where Ray goes, people just keep on picking fights with him out of nowhere. It must be because the word of his duel with Kedrick is spreading. Though Kedrick's gang is not attacking as instructed, the other gangs are free to do as they please. Allowing a stranger to walk around unscathed in their territory must hurt their fragile pride. They are even going as far as forming alliances to keep Ray in check. Nevertheless, everything is going according to plan so far. These random fights are making his magic stronger as he gets more accustomed to combat. As he gains more experience, his casting speed becomes faster, and the mental strain decreases. Overall, provoking more fights against every gang out there is a good choice. That aside, there is still one more concealed presence tailing him. Ray urged this hidden tail to come out. The young man, wearing a messenger cap and glasses, immediately knew that hiding was useless. He's been tailing Ray for a while now. He's become accustomed to his gray hair and expressionless face. In the streets of Sector 49, Ray had been dubbed as the Hunter. Glasses walked out of his hiding place to face the fearsome Hunter of Sector 49. Ray assesses the stranger up front. The kid is smaller than the usual gangsters. He's going around alone, and he doesn't look good at fighting either. Walking while cracking his fists, he warns the nerd to take the glasses off so they both won't be hassled by the breakage. Glasses hurriedly clear up the misunderstanding. If it's not obvious by his looks yet, he did not come here to fight at all. He adds that he is far from a fighter. With his scrawny body, he'll be useless in combat. So, Ray asks what is up. The kid steals his resolve and introduces himself as Philip. And scrawny Philip here has an offer for Ray. After hearing his spiel, Ray decides to follow Philip for now as they traverse the slums of Sector 49. You see, Philip's place of work is located near the eastern garbage dump. He's heard a lot of rumors about the so-called Hunter named Ray. Wherever in town, the Hunter is all everyone talks about. It seems like Ray earned such a menacing nickname after crushing multiple groups of gangsters by himself. After a few more minutes of walking, they finally arrive in front of an unremarkable building. Philip opens the door, and the harmonious sounds of community, commerce, and cooperation hit Ray like a ton of bricks. The place is huge. Philip formally welcomes Ray to his business venture, the Philip Hotel. Ray estimates that there must be over 100 people inside right now. More accurately, they have 186, including those working outside. Ray also realized that everyone here has something in common. It looks like every resident will have a hard time if they join another more violent group. They're all either young or small in stature. Philip explains that Sector 49 contains a lot of mines. That means a lot of adults die on the job, leaving a lot of orphans without any sort of support. Because of that, there is always a ton of work to do in every industry. Some businesses are willing to hire even children with such a massive manpower shortage. There are too many directionless youths for even the gangsters managing the streets to handle. So, in exchange for holding a monopoly over jobs with a couple of groups and businesses, Philip agreed to pay small bribes to secure work for his people. He is a manpower broker of sorts in this impoverished sector. His people are provided with low-cost shelter and job security. Despite his young age, Philip is smart and industrious enough to create this intricate system on his own. He worked hard to set up all this infrastructure to where it is today. Speaking of his people, Jonathan is one of Philip's success stories. The kid has a job where he doesn't get beaten every day. He has a community to support him, and he's on time with rent. Philip, the ever-attentive and thorough broker that he is, takes note of everything needed. He forgot that Ray was beside him, and his hands just subconsciously reached for his notepad and pen. Since the Hunter seems pretty curious about the hotel management books, he offers to let Ray have a look. Quickly riffling through the pages, Ray finds a page dedicated solely to him. It is filled with notes that Philip has written down while tailing him. Upon realizing that Ray could actually read, Philip felt awkward and a little fearful. Owning up to the rudeness of being so nosy and sneaky, he apologizes. He knows it's not an excuse, but he genuinely just likes observing people. That makes him the complete opposite of Ray. Much to Philip's surprise, the hunter seems chill with everything, insisting that there's no need to apologize. Philip can finally breathe with a sigh of relief. Walking deeper into the hotel, the two arrive at the last room all the way inside. The security guards posted up on the door saw Philip and shot Ray a puzzled look. They insist that they can't just let anyone in. But when they hear that Ray is the notorious hunter leaving a trail of gangster blood on the streets, the guards coil back in fear and shock. Finally, Philip welcomes Ray to his humble abode. He has a better home than 99% of Sector 49 residents. When Ray first heard Philip's yammering, he thought the kid was a con man. But he seems for real. Philip insists that he never lies. In his line of business, his credit is the most important thing. You can always earn back money, but once credit is lost, earning it back is extremely difficult. For a kid the same age as Ray, Philip sure is wise. When Ray asks about the proposal Philip raised earlier, the nerd trembles with uneasiness and anxiety. He swallows his uncertainty and raises his head to meet Ray's eyes with his clear gaze. Philip extends his hand and offers to become business partners with the hunter once he beats Kedrick and becomes the new leader of the gang. Ray quietly digests the offer, his eyes looking at the mana swirling in the young man's chest. He notices that Philip has less black mana of fear in his heart. In its place is the golden light of courage. This proposal only works if he wins, and while Phillips can't exclude the possibility of losing, he firmly believes that Ray has a high probability of winning. When asked why, Glasses simply answer that he is betting on a hunch. As he said before, Philip likes observing people. He likes studying behavior and habits to get a good idea of what a person is like. For example, he noticed that whenever Ray speaks to people, he has a habit of lowering his gaze down to their chest instead of their eyes. My boy is not a perv. He's just reading mana. Philip doesn't know the reason, so he theorizes that Ray must have some kind of trauma regarding people's eyes or faces. Anyway, it's pretty clear that he has a good eye for observation. Fascinated by this, Ray asks if he noticed anything else. He desperately wants to hear about other habits that Philip noticed. Off the dome, Philip lists out a couple more. He observed that Ray always steps with his right foot when turning a corner. He might be subconsciously preparing for a possible enemy encounter to keep his right hand ready to counter. Philip rattled off a few more highly detailed analyses of Ray's little quirks. Even he was impressed at how extensive every read was. Up until now, people have viewed him in a superficial fashion. They called him scary. They said something was not right with him. They said something must be wrong with him. He was the cold and expressionless boy that creeped everyone out. Even now, aside from anger and sadness, he can't say he knows how other emotions feel. This fated encounter with someone like Philip feels like a hint as to how he can grow emotionally as a person. Meanwhile, Philip is busy listing Boss Kedrick's quirks in hopes of helping Ray's chances of winning. Kedrick is prone to emotional outbursts in combat, while Ray is methodical in dismantling an opponent with thorough calculations. It's a good matchup. Before Philip can give his conclusion to sum everything up, Ray has already accepted the proposal. The payment and the finer details can be left for Philip's team. All Ray asks for in his new business partner is to take it seriously, even though that's already a given. He also has another condition. It seems like Philip has access to a lot of connections. Connections mean information, so Ray needs him to find something important. 2 days after finalizing the deal, Ray is back in his camp, getting his car checked out for repairs and maintenance. His mechanic is curious about Ray coming from Sector 50. Looking at the state of his vehicle, it would be believable if he claimed that he crossed a desert. Based on the fact that Philip sent the best mechanic they have, Ray is being taken care of properly. When the mechanic asks Ray to pass a wrench and a 6mm nut, Ray uses wind magic to gently lay it down beside the man. He's been constantly practicing precision control, and the increased finesse is apparent. After a few more minutes, the repairs are done. Except for the engine overheating, there wasn't much to tinker with. The mechanic replaced the coolant with something way better, so it should serve Ray fine from now on. Mr. Mechanic secretly brought the most expensive replacement he could find from the shop where he works, so there should be no vehicular problems in the near future. People in the hotel constantly go out of their way to go above and beyond when it comes to Philip's requests. He's their savior after all. Without Philip, most of them would be out of work, and that's why everyone tries their best to pay him back. As nerdy as squirrely Philip is, you can't deny his popularity with his people. Before leaving, the mechanic hands Ray a note written by Philip. Since it would be hard to memorize a whole message, Philip wrote it down. Finally, the enthusiastic mechanic left with all his equipment and tools in tow. Back in the office, the last request Ray raised was his need for information about mages. Philip had heard about people who could use magic before. He promised to gather information on anyone that's even the least bit suspicious. Given Philip's extensive web of information, it shouldn't take too long. And just like he promised, the nerd delivered quickly. He got a ton of information Ray can work on in just 2 days. The first on the list concerns Wolfman, a 42-year-old baker in 2nd Street. Witnesses swore that they saw the guy carry a heavy bag with one hand. Probably nothing. Next is Kenny Store's clerk Andrew from 8th Street. He ate dry wheat bread without wincing. Definitely sus. He might be the throat goat. Upon skimming through the list, Ray's hopes of finding a clue about mages and magic started dwindling. But then, a line of text catches his attention. A lead that can be worth looking into and confirming. Just to cover his bases, Ray still checked out the people least likely to be related to magic. He crossed out ordinary people who were just a little weird but didn't possess the chest rings indicative of magic power. After exhausting the list, Ray was left with one last lead. It listed an incident where a steel pipe fell from a roof in an empty shopping district. The suspicious figure is a man in his 30s or 40s. He is often seen going between above and underground with food in hand. That day, a strong wind blew, strong enough to knock the steel pipe out of its trajectory, as the man narrowly avoided an accident. He did not appear surprised or shaken by the supposed near-death incident in the slightest. Even Ray is convinced that there is a high likelihood of this man being a mage. On the way to the shopping district, he finds himself in a familiar area. The bookstore he passed on the first day. There are 2 kids squatting outside, making sure that the store is closed. These 2 have been throwing rocks at the windows every day, tormenting the owners and slowly forcing them to stop operating their business. Ray overhears them discussing getting double pay if they can push the store owners to sell the property. They can just throw rocks at the 2nd floor this time. Stop targeting the store and start messing with their home. That way, they can torment and force the owners out. When one of the kids moves to throw a hefty rock, the 2nd floor window swings open, revealing the fiery young lady yelling at the rock throwers. She heard everything they were saying, and she was pissed to the high heavens. The young lady curses at the kids, screaming at them to get out. Ray sees the yellow light of courage and conviction swirling in her chest. However, her heart is overrun with the black mana of fear. Even the kids can see that she's just acting tough. Her words are harsh, but her body is trembling. Without warning, the kid finally threw the rock. Thankfully, his aim sucks, and it hits the wall. Nevertheless, it shook the young lady. It is widely known that the bookstore only has kids and some sick old people inside, so they are an easy target. Fighting through terror, the young lady continues acting tough and yelling at the unruly kids. The 2 little psychopaths continue swarming her with rocks, this time deliberately aiming for her face. Just as Ray is about to step in to prevent any serious harm, he is shocked by the brilliant light he's never seen come out of anyone else before. The young lady extended both her hands as mana danced around her palm. A chaotic wind intercepts the incoming rock, protecting her from a direct hit. The psycho kids were taken aback. Their rock fell back down instead of messing up the girl's face. While holding back her tears, the young maiden tending to the bookstore reveals her true magical nature. Ray has been looking far and wide only to find a mage by pure coincidence. The psycho kids' dullard minds cannot comprehend what just happened. Chalking it up to their imagination, they try to attack again. Ray is certain that he just witnessed his first concrete clue about magic. It came from a young woman visibly shaking and trying to act tough in front of bullies. The psycho kids work in unison with rocks in hand. This time, they are doubling the firepower for assured destruction. Not expecting continuous attacks, the young lady is left stuck in the window like a sitting duck. Knowing she can't block the incoming rocks, she closes her eyes and accepts her painful fate. Luckily for her, another mage is hiding in the corner. Ray waves his hand, stopping the rocks by manipulating the mana in the air. He pushed his control and power harder, making sure to reach the rocks. It filled the streets with wild winds akin to a tornado. The next thing you know, the rocks made U-turns, finding their way back to their senders' faces. Ray made sure to make it hurt a lot. He injected enough force to knock the psycho kids out cold in one hit. Finally, he exits the alley to check on the bastards lying on the floor. He looks up, making eye contact with the young lady in the window. It's been a while, but their second meeting is a lot more interesting than the first. Ray gave the psycho kids more beating, targeting their arms and legs to make sure that they didn't cause any more unnecessary trouble. The young lady invited Ray in to formally thank him for the timely help. He asserts that there is no need for such formality. Besides, he has something he wants to ask her. It just so happens that she does too. At the same time, he asks if she's a mage, and she asks if he just used magic back there. The enthusiastic inquiries made both of them pause for a moment. Their sudden closeness paints a blush on her face. She clears her throat and invites Ray into her home to talk a bit more. Upon entering, Ray's eyes wandered all over the place. This is his first time inside a bookstore, so it seems foreign to him. Finally, she introduced herself as Veronica. The bookstore was named after her. Returning politeness, Ray curtly introduced himself too. Looking ashamed, Veronica lowers her head and apologizes for yelling at Ray like a crazy person last time. She's just under a lot of stress because of those pesky psycho kids. Ray thought nothing of it. It was just a misunderstanding after all. After apologizing, she continues thanking him for the help. She could have been badly hurt if it wasn't for Ray. Honestly, Ray just wants to take a look around the bookstore. He wanted to obtain some magical knowledge, but meeting a mage in the flesh was a bigger gain than expected. Veronica was shocked. In this place, people are usually receptive to appreciation in whatever form. Ray is an exception. Sitting at one of the tables, Ray asks her where she learned magic. She casually answers that her grandpa taught her. Hearing that there is another magic user in the picture, Ray's curiosity deepens. He asks to meet Veronica's grandfather, and the fiery young lady thinks that it should be fine. Before going upstairs to fetch the old man, Veronica notices something concerning. In Ray's cheek is a slight bleeding cut. He must have been grazed by something, considering he's been throwing hands left and right. Veronica worries that he might get an infection if left untreated. So, she extended her arm and held Ray's face gently. Slowly and steadily, she summoned a white and warm light that wrapped around his skin. After a few seconds, the graze on his cheek is gone, as if it never existed in the first place. With that, the simple treatment is all done. Surprised by this new application of magic, Ray stood up and eagerly asked how Veronica did that. He wants to know how she moved the white mana, converted it into a gentle light, and used it for healing. No matter how hard he focused on the past, he was never able to move white mana. He came to understand that white mana only reacts when someone is considerate or dedicated. It also appears when someone sacrifices themselves for others. All those complex and selfless emotions are like a foreign language to the emotionally incapable young man. Veronica can't explain her technique in detail herself. She just knows how to use healing magic, that's all. She doesn't even know what he meant by white mana. Ray recalls asking Niles about the colors he constantly sees. Even that guy hasn't heard of such a thing. As far as he knows, mana is not visible to the naked eye. Even mages themselves can't see mana. While Veronica can't comprehend the concept of that white light, she's familiar with the element of regeneration. The element she used just now is widely referred to as the element of regeneration. Usually healing only uses one element, though she could add 2 or more assisting elements to amplify or alter its effects. There are over 20 types of elements out there if you just count the naturally occurring ones. If you count the more specific and abstract elements, such as amplification disturbance, manipulation, and more, there have to be at least 100 different elements. Just listening to Veronica's thorough explanations has widened Ray's horizons by quite a bit. Perhaps talking with her grandfather would give him more clarity. Unfortunately, her grandpa is sick and can't get out of bed most of the time. Still, Veronica wants to check on the old man to see if he's awake and can talk with Ray. While she runs up to the second floor, Ray is left to wander the bookstore by himself. Kyladric's travelogue, interpretation of the unconscious, all kinds of literature are neatly arranged on their respective shelves. From what he heard, books are very expensive items. Ray sees his dirty, weary, and dust-covered hand against the smooth cover of a book and hesitates. He thinks touching these valuable things with his hands will lower their value. Come to think of it, the last time he took a bath was when it rained clean water. That was a long-ass time ago. This dude smells musty. He's gotten used to his own smell, so he doesn't feel discomfort when faced with bad odor. But now he's concerned that others would. Veronica definitely got a whiff. Maybe she has a bad nose, or she's just politely tolerating Ray's stank. Letting his eyes wander once more, he finds himself on a table filled with books laid out like journals. One of the covers caught Ray's curiosity. The Study of Elemental Distribution by Sector is a book about the expansion of black rain. Veronica comes down the stairs and is scared by Ray, who was lurking right behind her, and he whispered to her that he's still here. She thought he left because she took too long upstairs. She is embarrassed and figures he was looking around the store while she was gone. He asks her if she had any books about magic, as he could not find any. Veronica asks him if he can read the titles, and he shocks her by telling her he can, but he did not find any books on magic. He asks her how her grandfather is doing, and if he can meet him. She tells him he is resting, if he could come back tomorrow. He agrees, and as Ray is leaving, she asks him why he wants to her grandfather anyways. He tells her he is looking for the prism as he opens the door to leave. Ray is sitting in a cafe reading a note which has description of a man in his 30s or 40s, leaves his apartment for an hour between 7 and 8 p.m., comes back with food and lives across the cafe. This information was given to him by Joni. While he is looking at the note, Joni appears with a free meal and gives it to Ray. She tells him it's on the house and it's her honor to serve him as he is the hunter. Ray thanks her and asks her if the info she gave him is accurate. She tells him it is, as she has been noticing this man's routine for a while now. Joni is called back by her boss, who is mad at her for slacking off. It is 6 p.m. and Ray has to wait another hour for the mystery man to leave his apartment, so he thinks he should wait. As Ray finishes his meal, the man leaves his apartment, and Ray sees the red aura around the man, and he thinks this is time to get the information he needs. He sprints across towards the man's door, thanking Joni for the food, and finds that the door is locked as expected. Ray knows he cannot turn around. As he thinks for a solution, his rainbow mana flows into the keyhole and opens the door for him. Ray is surprised because he didn't know he can do this. He wastes no time and starts to look around for information. He reads a note that Man was writing which states that he might have been kicked out of the 66 organization. He also mentions something about a red bloodstone being stronger than he expected it to be in the letter. Ray opens a box and feels a sensation. He sees red stones in the box with red mana flowing out of it. He thinks the red stones are similar to the stones on Kedrick's ring, however the mana is easier flowing and stronger. He puts the stone on his ring and creates the brightest red fire he has created yet. As he is doing that, he hears the man returning, surprising him as it has not even been 15 minutes yet. The man enters talking to himself about the how he forgot his wallet, that he is getting old, and that why his boss abandoned him. Ray looks on hiding behind a door. The man grabs his wallet and as he is about to leave he remembers he had forgotten one more thing. He creeps behind the door Ray is hiding behind and looks at him with glaring red eyes saying he forgot to rat poison. The man stares at Ray who is hiding behind the wall with an evil look in his eyes claiming he needs rat poison too. He asks our boy if he thinks he did not know that Ray was hiding there. Ray whips out his sword and slashes it across the man's face. The man is taken aback while he is bleeding because Ray cut his face. The man is mad that a kid, not even an assassin, cut his face and the blood is going into his eyes. Ray thinks this is his opportunity to control this guy and get information out of him. As Ray goes on for another strike, the man stops it with his bare hands with red mana flowing out of his hands. Ray is surprised how this man used mana to stop himself from being cut as the man calls him names and tells him it's disrespectful to point a knife at adults. He says he was going easy on him as he thought Ray was a kid, but claims he will kill Ray given how strong he is. As he goes on to attack Ray, Ray also stops the man's attack with red mana in his hands. The man is surprised how he can do it. Ray thinks he remembered the colors, patterns, and ratio and copied it to defend himself. Ray blocks the man's attack by copying him. The man is surprised as he was the one who created the metallization technique and how Ray copied it. He goes on to attack Ray in anger and Ray overpowers him, causing multiple cuts on his body and face. The man realizes that there is an assassin who can copy magic but did not think that the assassin would be a kid. The man thinks Ray was sent by his boss to kill him and retrieve the red stones. He gets mad and all of his body is taken over by flame. He tells Ray to tell his boss will be visited by Walter the Blood Eye soon and his boss will regret abandoning him. That is, if he makes it out of here alive, as he wants to burn Ray down and make his boss acknowledge him. Ray knows this situation is dangerous as Walter's mana is spinning intensely, leaking out of his blood vessels. If he didn't use his mana to protect himself, he would have been in trouble. Blood Eye, covered in flames, challenges Ray to try to kill him again. He attacks Ray and he blocks his attacks with rainbow mana. He asks Ray how long he plans to play defensive. Ray knows he cannot get close to the man as he is surrounded by fire, but his defense will not last forever. Ray thinks he has to extinguish the flames before he can attack the man. He surprises the man by surrounding him with water and using 2 magic techniques at the same time. Ray prepares a water attack and charges at the man with full force. Walter, while getting hit, realizes he might not be the assassin. Ray defeats him and starts bleeding from his nose, thinking these are the effects of him using magic at full mental capacity. He believes his magic has become faster and easier. But if Walter felt so strong for him, he cannot imagine how strong the man with the monocle is. He believes he needs to get stronger in order to carry out his revenge and knows he has time to do it. He regrets not getting all of the stones as he did not know things would turn out this way. After defeating Walter, Ray returns to Veronica's shop, who kindly greets him and welcomes him in. She notices Ray has changed his clothes and asks what happened to his old clothes. Although Ray thinks he got rid of the clothes because Walter would recognize him by his clothes, as he did not see Ray's face in the room because it was dark, he tells her that he just got rid of them. She tells him that she told her grandpa about his visit, how Ray saved them with magic, and that he is looking for the rainbow but nothing else as they walk towards Grandpa's door. 2 boys look at Ray in anger, and Veronica tells him that they are her little brothers. Her grandpa brought them from the orphanage and took all 3 in. Ray asks her if it was to teach them magic. She gasps and asks him how he knows that. Ray tells her it was a guess, as she told him her grandpa teaches her magic. They both arrive at his door and Veronica introduces her grandpa Graham to Ray. Grandpa asks her to go out for a while and Ray takes a seat next to him. He first of all thanks Ray for chasing the kids away, saying it was his job, but he cannot do it as he is unwell. Ray notices Grandpa has 4 rings, indicating he is feeling multiple emotions. Ray thinks this would be difficult for Grandpa and hand for him to read. Grandpa tells Ray he heard that Ray has questions to ask him, and Ray tells him that he has been looking for a mage for a long time. Graham asks him isn't he a mage himself. He heard Ray could use magic very skillfully. Ray tells him he still has a lot to learn. Grandpa laughs and asks Ray where he's from, which is met by a silence. Grandpa thinks Ray has a long backstory, so he lights up his hand and asks Ray to play a game with him. Winner gets to ask losers questions. As this is happening, Ray can see and feel the mana between them. Grandpa tells him there are multiple elements in magic, and elements can meet to create new elements of magic. He created an element of maintenance which would stop external factors from interfering between them. Ray surprises Graham by asking what is the other element he is seeing as he can see two colors. Grandpa thinks a regular mage could not have identified this in his lifetime, yet Ray did, and questions his luck as he went to so many orphanages to find talent. But now that he does not have long to live, true talent is sitting in front of him. Ray asks him what this other element is, and Grandpa tells him he will have to play the game to get answers. Graham created a sphere. Whoever pulls the sphere to them using magic, he gets to ask the questions. He says he'll put it closer to Ray to make it fair. Ray barely gets his hand up and Grandpa already caught the sphere. Ray is in shock, thinking he is fast. He asks Ray where he learnt magic, who answers he is self-taught. Grandpa is surprised, claims Ray surprised him twice in one day. Ray asks him if a self-taught mage is rare, and Grandpa tells him he has to win the game to ask the questions. They both get ready for round 2. Grandpa and Ray prepare for round 2, and Ray lost again. Grandpa tells Ray that the point of this game to see how well one handles mana. Ray is angry and thinks at this rate he will be giving out his information and getting nothing in return. As they prepare for round 3, Ray changes his tactics and wins the round, claims there is nothing in the rules about hindering opponents. Grandpa tells him to ask anything, and Ray asks him what mana is. Grandpa tells him mana is an element all things are made of. One cannot see it directly, but they can see it through secondary things like lightning. He also tells him a very few amount of people can sense mana. You do not have to use magic to sense it. Sensing mana and manipulating it using magic are two different talents. Ray asks Grandpa if he meant the ability to manipulate mana as talent. Grandpa tells him yes, as mages who are honest with themselves can use mana better than others. They go on to another round and Ray wins again. Grandpa is surprised by how the element of maintenance is the most difficult to perceive, but Ray is figuring it out in real time. Ray asks Grandpa what the rings around the hearts of the mages are, and he tells him they are vessels for mana. Depending on the character of the mage, these vessels collect and refine mana in the air and distribute them as elements. Ray asks him if these vessels make the mana easier to use. He is told yes, and besides that, if mana is used from the air constantly, this could cause mana poisoning. People are affected differently. Some get sad, some start laughing, and some get extremely angry. This is then a permanent mental illness. Ray thinks he is immune to mana poisoning as he does not feel emotion. Using atmospheric mana with emotion can cause the user to turn mad. He asks Grandpa if someone is immune to mana poisoning, it would be a great advantage. Grandpa thinks the idea is great, but he hasn't seen someone use it that way yet. Grandpa asks Ray if he has a dream. He tells him he wants to kill someone, and also wants to save someone. Grandpa says he has heard people say they want to kill, but never that they want to save someone. He asks Ray if he would like to learn magic from him. Ray is surprised, and wonders why a man of his abilities would teach an orphan from the streets. Graham tells him he wants nothing from him, and Ray agrees. Graham asks Veronica to come in, asks her to tell him why he took her and her brothers home from the orphanage. She tells him it's because he wanted to leave a legacy of his knowledge. He tells Ray that he heard he wants to find the rainbow. Everyone has different theories of the rainbow, but all converge to one thing. Whoever finds the rainbow will become like a god, and that is why the monocle mage is also looking for the rainbow. Veronica asks what a god, and as Grandpa is explaining to them that the god is creator of all things, a rock breaks through a window which Ray catches. Ray swiftly catches the rock thrown at them while he grabs onto Veronica to protect her. He thinks despite of him injuring their arm and making it useless, the bullies of the bookstore do not seem to stop. Grandpa thanks Ray for saving them once again and claims he cannot do it anymore because of his health. He asks Veronica to bandage Ray's hand as it started bleeding from the shards of glass when he caught the rock. Ray asks Graham about these bullies of the store. He tells him he got an offer to sell the store, but he refused and thinks it's their doing. He opened the store to help his student and complete his research paper, which is his life's work. He enjoyed meeting people in the store, but as he is getting old and sick, he can no longer protect the store and plans to sell it for the safety of his grandchildren. As he says this, Veronica starts crying and arguing that she does not want him to sell the store or fade away. Grandpa is sleeping and Veronica is on the floor with Ray standing next to her. She tells him about Graham's sleep disease. His hours of sleep will keep increasing till he is no longer able to wake up. Right now, he can only stay up for 2 to 3 hours a day. She asks Ray to come tomorrow as Graham will be up for a few hours. Ray wears Veronica's raincoat, which fits him perfectly. Before leaving, he tells her not to worry as everything will go well in an attempt to comfort her. Ray heads out to look for the bullies of the bookstore on the 8th Street. This area belongs to Jeffer's gang. He believes those kids also belong to Jeffer. He thinks they are all hiding because of the black rain, so he has to switch up his plans a bit. He needs to find Phillips first as he connects all the gangs. He can arrange a meeting with Jeffer. Ray goes to meet Philip and runs into Cedric's gang. He sees Cedric beating someone up in the container. As he breaks down the down to confront Cedric, he asks Ray what he's doing in there, and if he also has business with this guy pointing towards an injured person.